Hey Shweta, welcome to a Caffeine and Carrot session. A pleasure having you with us today.
Hey Rohan, thanks so much for having me.
For everyone hearing in, Shweta works with Chrysalis High as Director HR. She has over 8+ years in human resources and a lot more in customer-centric roles across airlines and other industries. Again, Shweta, welcome to our call today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
We were discussing during our conversation during our prep about your experience getting into HR, the initial hiccups, the initial challenges as you started your career in human resources. Do you want to share with everyone your firsthand initial experience?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I stepped away from my aviation roots and moved into the IT space for the first time in 2014. Sorry, 2014. And I took over the HR operations domain at the first IT company that I worked with. It was a bit of a culture shock, I'll be honest. We spoke completely different languages. But having said that, the whole journey till the day I exited from there was absolutely fabulous. My learning curve was significantly high, and the initial onslaught of things that needed improvement. I think that's what kind of gave me the impetus to really get up and get going. So things like setting up the entire operational piece in place, putting everything in together. I'll give you a small example. Something as simple as a leave module was being managed manually for 800 plus employees. Now that's obvious when you're on a upward tick where the company is going, looking to bring on board, make it 1,000 in the next 6 months, and so on and so forth. So just putting a piece like that together in itself posed significant challenges, and that's where I learned everything from literally from the ground up. So breaking down the entire piece, understanding who all were involved, understanding my stakeholders, getting everyone's buy-in, selling the entire piece, where you're upgrading your entire process from a manual to an automated mode in itself was quite challenging. And I think the best part was documenting the entire piece line by line.
Right.
So various pieces like that we picked up, and I'm happy to say we were able to really successfully roll out quite a few enhancements especially from manual to the automation version.
Right. And you mentioned you worked through that time on various policies, procedures, setting them up. Again, some that didn't exist, maybe from scratch, some that existed, trying to create a digital version of it for better management. You did mention that you had access at that point to an intranet to put this in place. And so what it meant is for you to put in your custom requirements and have the team internally develop that for you. How easy or difficult was that?
So I'm going to again go back and refer to my non-HR, non-IT roots, where I had no visibility to a full-blown HRMS tool to start off with. So using an intranet and where they give you so much of so much option to customize was like let loose in a candy shop. So you could work very, very closely with the dev team and literally break down each process that you wanted. That was really good because we were able to customize so many activities, so intrinsic and so in sync with our work culture and workspace that it worked out really well. And I think the important piece for me, again, the important learning was it wasn't a ready-made HRMS tool that was, put in my hands. We literally had the option to start from scratch on any piece.
Right. So, and while you took that positively and it looks good, I'm sure it came along with a bunch of challenges of actually having to think through everything you wanted end to end, because there was nothing for you to pick and choose from. It was you trying to put in requirement and say, hey, here's how it needs to work, here's what the workflow looks like, here's how different stakeholders need to be involved, whether it's different members of the HR team, or the folks from the different teams that you're interacting, or the employees themselves?
Oh yeah, there were a host of problems. The first problem in itself was me trying to visualize how I wanted that entire process rolled out. Like I said, I keep harping back to the point that I came from a non-HR background. So for me, it was doubly hard to put down things piece by piece, break them down into very, very small pieces, and put it all together in a large framework and roll it out. So yeah, connecting with multiple stakeholders, like I said, getting their buy-in, documenting the entire process, ensuring that once you've documented it and you have a piece rolled out like that, you try and bring in consistency and maintain it over the course of the next coming months. Not only that, when you were creating this piece, you had to think of scalability. You couldn't just bring in an automation or digitizing a process without having to think that this is how long it's going to go for you. So it's important to know that this is something that is going to be sustainable, scalable, and you're going to have to you're going to take on the mantle or the onus of making sure that there's consistency across, which means documenting the whole thing and ensuring it's passed on.
Right. And fast forward to a couple of years back, where you got your first exposure probably onto HRMS systems, sort of off the shelf of the market. What was that like?
That was so now we come from a purely customized setup into something that was already ready made. And but the beauty of it was I came in with a lot of I would say learnings and ammunition to know that this works. This is how I would like a certain activity to work, and perhaps we can go back to the vendor and say these are the kind of minor small customizations that we can make. You see, the whole idea was that we make it to suit our requirement, which is of course standard. You would do that everywhere, and maintain that consistency going forward. So once I've made that change, it needs to stick and just go with it. So yeah, the HRMS tool that came into my hands was again a new learning altogether, but it was a lot of fun. I thank the time that I had the opportunity to work at an intranet where you could break everything down from scratch.
Right. And so even with an HRMS system in place, with you trying to build out all of your processes digitally, were there any gaps? Were there things that you were still unable to do on an HRMS and were relying on notes and Excel and a lot of other manual form?
Yeah. So simple things, documenting a process that I would need run in a certain fashion, that would still probably be on a process document, in perhaps a Word document somewhere stored, where you would want people to go and, refer to it. So every new team member that would step into the HR team would need to have an induction on these processes so that they know that that this is how we want it run. Now, it's a pain point because you have to keep revisiting this manual document. You have to keep updating it. You have to keep ensuring that this filters down, the understanding is clear. So there are better ways to do this, but that was clearly a pain point, and that's there everywhere you go. I mean, you have to really have a well set tool, so to speak, that can take care of this activity for you.
Right. And so whilst you did that manually on Word document and multiple different manual ways, fast forwarding it a little bit more to a more recent time, you mentioned you've started developing various playbooks around these repetitive sets of things, like whether it's employee onboarding or payroll processing or performance management. And each of these sort of are consistently repeating, whether it's every time a new employee joins or on a monthly cadence or a quarterly cadence, depending on what you're trying to address. And so can you share a little bit more about how you started and why you started getting through creating playbooks around these?
Yeah, so the beauty of creating the playbook was it was a one-time activity for us. It could be documented on the platform. It was easy to filter down to everybody. Every new joiner who came, all I had to do was assign the playbook. We created playbooks for onboarding and exit and payroll to start off with. Very mundane, very repetitive, extremely non-original activities that just had to be tick marked as you went along. Now, especially payroll, where there is just no room for negotiation. You just have to follow each process, and it follows a certain order. Likewise, your exit and onboarding, right? So the whole concept of playbooks was easy. Once you put in that thought and documented the whole thing, it was good to filter down. You could assign people to it. It was a quick, run through. Didn't need constant revisit. Obviously, you would have to revisit the process, which you would do anywhere, right? For any process, a policy document, you would perhaps revisit it every 6 months or once a year at least. But the whole, the thought behind the playbook was that it maintained consistency. It was easy for joiners to come in and get an induction onto the piece. You could derive analytics out of it. It tied into engagement, because, and the whole piece came across as very easy to pick up and easy to consume. Not a very heavy document which goes on and on with a lot of content in it. So this was very succinct, very to the point, gives you the timelines, gives you ownership, tells you exactly how the flow is going to be, breaks it down for you in very, very simplistic form, So consumption becomes that much easier, and maintains continuity and experience for the new joiner who comes on board.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Now, that's a good segue for us to talk about, each of these different things that you've, picked up on with differing experiences, whether it's building something from scratch, utilizing something and configuring it, or, creating these consistent playbooks, right? The question that comes off in most cases, whether it's, your own managers or your, executives, is what is the reason, effort that you're putting in versus the return that you're getting off it, right? And so what's the end result? What's the outcome, right? So are you spending hours and hours and hours behind something with, minimal or no return for the organization, for your own function? And so is that something that you've been able to, put together and successfully establish for your managers and for the executives?
Yeah, absolutely. So very valid point. Yes. So while we did put in a lot of time and effort into, creating these policy processes, the whole effort to maintain them and make sure there's consistency across was time consuming, quite laborious in its, management. The whole concept of playbooks made it simpler. Like I said, it was a one-time activity. Everyone gets aligned to it. It's a very, very systematic, organized form. What we got from it is definitely a lot of man hours saved, man hours shaved. Managed to utilize that in the best possible way so that you can now, allocate perhaps your team to do other things, other more important things. Because at the end of the day, these processes, like I said, they're mundane, they're repetitive, they don't really need too much of thought beyond a point. You need something to ensure that it runs in a certain fashion because it has to. And because you want that consistency, you want a tool that manages this. And playbooks, probably, I would say, in my experience in the time that I've used them, has been able to, touch upon all these aspects. So yeah, definitely engagement and man hours saved for sure.
Right, and I'm sure you're keen on seeing what the future holds for you with where the playbooks transform. Are you trying to do this right now manually? Are you trying to bring in some form of automation through this entire experience?
Well, currently it's being put together manually, but yeah, the thought is that at my current place also we would want to perhaps bring in the concept of playbooks in some shape or form. I do believe they will add a lot of value.
Sure.
While we may not be able to bring in its in entirety at this moment, at least I think one step into this area would definitely help. So yeah, that's something that is definitely, I would say, in the offing. At some point, I would like to, because let's be honest, nobody likes doing manual tasks over and over again.
Absolutely, and that's great. That you've shared your feedback, your experience across your career, across different ways of managing the HR processes. Thank you so much for that, Shweta. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thanks so much for having me. We should do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Take care. Bye, bye.